So welcome everyone to our webinar today, Poor Budgeting, Never Again. This webinar is actually the third part of a webinar series that we've been running around board. So welcome along today. Good morning for those of you in Queensland or other states, and good afternoon everyone else. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Please, we encourage you to ask questions along the way today so that we can address them at the end. In your control panel of your WebEx session today, there's a little spot where you can type in questions, and we'll dedicate 5 minutes at the end of the session to see these. And also we are recording today's session, and we will publish that up onto our YouTube channel. So if it's something you'd like to watch again or share with colleagues, you know, by all means, it'll be up there ready to go. Presenting with me today, I'm Rebecca, is Philip de Harcourt. And Philip's been, has an extensive background of over 15 years with consulting and primarily helping organisations improve their budgeting and forecasting and reporting processes. And he comes very well qualified, being a CPA himself, and also studied an MBA. So very experienced and very qualified in helping our customers day to day, improving their budgeting and forecasting process and moving away from that poor budgeting situation. So the agenda today is fairly straightforward. Obviously, I'm going to give you an introduction to board for those who haven't attended one of our webinars before. And Philip is then going to run through a demonstration of board, and then we're going to look at some questions. And throughout the session today, we're running a couple of poll questions. And that's really just to make the session a bit more interactive and I guess get you thinking about some of your experiences in your organisation around budgeting and forecasting and reporting. So just to provide a little bit of context, this is actually, as I've already mentioned, the third webinar in the series, all involving and showcasing board. Now, the first one we ran earlier in the year, and it was very much around helping organisations that have at the moment, they're capturing and storing lots of data, but got the challenge of, well, how do you easily analyse and present that information in a helpful and meaningful way to the organisation? So building your own reports and dashboards and scorecards to answer various business questions. So, and the second one was just recently, and that was focused around the planning side of things, so sales and operational planning, and just demonstrating how technology like board can help enable a more unified approach to planning, where typically that's more siloed and more disjointed. And thirdly is our webinar today, Poor Budgeting, Never Again. And that's talking about, well, what does poor budgeting look like? You know, what are we trying to help our customers overcome? And giving you a demonstration of board in order to show you how other organisations have, you know, solved that problem. And I guess you may be asking yourself, well, how is it this one piece of software, board, was actually able to be the showcase of all those different webinars, given they're all quite different in flavour? And the answer to that is what board itself is, and I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to explain what board is. And the best way I sum it up is I call it an all-in-one tool. And by that I mean it's a single place to do 4 key things. It's a single place to do all your reporting. And when I say all your reporting, I mean all the different data and different requirements you have for reporting across your organisation. It's a single place to plan, so budget, forecast, model, and it's a single place to analyse. So any sort of analysis from something quite simple to something quite complicated. And in the heart of all that is the ability to obviously then manage that strategy. So it's all about creating a plan relating to your strategy, monitoring that through reporting, and then doing an analysis and starting that cycle again. So a single integrated environment that gives you both that performance management capability and that analytics and business intelligence. And you'll see from the demo that it's not separate modules or separate parts of the software that do these individual things, but separately, it's actually inherently all part of it. So when you do a budget, it's actually very naturally analytical at the same time, and hopefully you'll get that perspective. when we have a look at the demonstration. One other key thing I think I should cover off about board as well, and because I think it sets it apart from other different technologies. And actually, Philip and I were preparing for this session earlier in the week, and we were talking about board, and Philip said, look, that when he started working with board 5 to 6 years ago, that what really stuck out for him was that it was more of a toolkit approach rather than being a technical developer's approach that some other technologies have that have similar capabilities. So the fact that you can do simple concepts like drag and drop to create reports and dashboards, and the fact that it's configurable so that you can go in and learn that configuration and options. You don't need to be a developer, you don't need to know coding or scripting in order to achieve outcomes. So it's that toolkit approach that we very much like about board, and you'll get a little bit of insight into that as well today. So let's just go back to answer that original question around poor budgeting. What is poor budgeting? So I think firstly it's important not to just get our thoughts on that, but look at independent research available around this topic. And we look at one called BARC organisation, and their surveys indicate that 49% of organisations think that their process takes too long, and that on top of that, 26 of them, by the time it's finished, believe that the information that comes out of that process is outdated, which is which is quite alarming. And if we have a look at another survey, a Hackett group, they found an average company will spend up to 95 days of effort around different iterations and having to manually complete the budget process. And in terms of elapsed time, that's sort of on averaging, upwards of to 4 months. So they're the kinds of, I guess, challenges people are trying to overcome by automating and looking to technology to make things more efficient and effective. And if I just look at, from my personal perspective, working with organisations sort of over the last 10 to 15 years, some of the key things that I find are difficult to achieve that people would like to achieve, particularly in a manual kind of spreadsheet environment, are things like, well, we can't manage the process, and budgeting and forecasting is a business process. It's the process around those spreadsheets that has to happen and can't be managed well. It's difficult to collaborate in an organised way around between users and approvers. It's quite disconnected. Finance does some planning, and other parts of the organisation plan using different spreadsheets or different applications quite separately because it's too difficult to integrate it all, and it's too hard to extend what you can deliver to the organisation around things like rolling forecasts and quickly doing what-if scenarios. So they're the kinds of things that we've seen board be able to achieve for our clients, and you'll see that definitely in the demonstration with Philip today. So what does budgeting look like when we take away those poor aspects, and what kinds of success stories have customers had by using it? Now, this case study is available on our website if you want to read about it in further, but it's at one of our Queensland customers, North Queensland Bulk Ports, taking processes that would take 5 months down to 1 month. That's a lot of time now to go and do something more value add and be able to deliver more to the organisation around rolling forecasts and long-term, in their case, 10-year planning, which was difficult to achieve. So we're just going to run our first poll question. They only take a second or two, so it's not going to hold us up, and then we'll hand over to Philip. So is there a business case for improved budgeting and forecasting at your organisation? So if we just have a look at those options there, and if you could select your answer, and we can have a very quick look at the outcome of that in a moment. And there we go. So it's obviously quite clear that there is a clear business case for the majority of the people on the call today, and there may be one, but it's not quite clear yet. So thanks for your participation, everybody, and we'll move on to Philip, and he's going to run through a demonstration of.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. Let's just jump out of the presentation and we'll go across to board itself. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is a demonstration database for a simple budgeting or planning application. Everything that we build in Board looks slightly different from the next thing, so just bear in mind that this is a demonstration and we're simplifying certain elements here, and obviously it's not a one-size-fits-all application. This particular company works their planning process in a lovely cycle. They're obviously working their way around. Each one of these is a hyperlink that then throws open another screen. Board is also web-based, so all you need is a browser and you can log on to Board. First screen I'm going to go into is setting up the budget. So I'm starting off with basically a blank budget at the moment, and what we generally do is populate a budget from a source. For instance, the actual data coming out of your ERP system is always a good source. We've got a couple of options over here on the left that allow us to populate the budget with some pre-configured selections. We can make it equal to the previous year. We can add a 5% uplift, a 10% uplift, or a variable uplift. Now, again, remember this is simplified. In real life, there'd probably be more complexity to do this. But if, for instance, we say, well, let's just make it equal to the previous year plus 5%, I can click on that and a little process runs, talks to our ERP system, grabs the actuals, adds 5%, and pops it in my budget there. Okay, and again, these processes, as Rebecca mentioned, they're a series of steps, but if you go under the hood, there's no coding language to them. It's just basically drag and drop and picking things from a series of choices. Okay, so moving on, after setting up an initial budget, we can start to enter some volumes in. Now, I'm logged in as the administrator of the system here, and what I can see in this data entry screen is that it's driven by manager. So if I go to the various managers, you can see that the numbers change. And the design is that an individual manager will log into Board and enter their numbers. So let's go and do that. So if I sign out as the administrator and then log back in now as an individual user, there's a couple of differences. I'll go back into the screen that we were just in. But one thing you'll notice is that I'm logged in as the area manager Blanchard. Now, instead of getting a drop-down showing a list of different area managers, which is what I got as the administrator, I'm only seeing myself. And there's no way I can get around that. And now we can set a series of restrictions per person. It could be that Blanchard only works in an individual region or range of products, or so on. And that all seamlessly happens under the hood, so that when Blanchard logs in, he or she only sees the data that relates to them. So now that I'm logged in, I can go and edit numbers. I can, this works out a target based on a previous percentage. I can either enter in my new target, or I can actually go to my end result percentage and say, well, let's just change that to 10, and then it works the calculation backwards, if you will. I can come along to the total of my particular product, 147,000, and make a top-down change. Okay, I'm going to make it 200,000. Now, what will occur there is it will uplift everything based on the proportions that they already are. So you'll notice all my numbers have now gone up accordingly, and I've accidentally entered in 2 million, so I better take a 0 out. That's better. So I can enter at the bottom level, and I can enter at the top level, or anywhere in between. And in fact, these numbers are actually at an aggregated level already because I can already drill down on this and look at individual products within a channel. The other thing I can do is board isn't just about recording numbers. You'll notice here that I've got a notes ability up here. In this case, the notes is created so that I can actually open or save Word documents. And so here's the Word document that I've attached in against that particular record. I could attach PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, it could be text notes, anything I want. The important thing to remember is it's not just numbers. It could be commentary or supporting documents as well. Okay, so moving on, maybe Blanchard's finished editing their volume numbers. They might then go through to look at rates and values. Another similar data entry screen. There's a few more things that I'd probably want to show you. We've got selectors on the screen that I could say, I just want to have a look at the duty-free channel. All my numbers and my charts on the screen to change accordingly. Likewise, the charts are all interactive. Board isn't just about looking at the numbers. You've got a lot of visual aids in its business intelligence and dashboarding tools that you can utilize. And immediately I might come along and go, well, some of these are good, but I'm particularly interested in those couple of months where it seems to be fairly low. So what I can do is I can actually select those months by drilling into the chart, and then the numbers will then change accordingly, which is always a good feature as well. Likewise, I can drill into the data, and I can keep on drilling to my heart's content down to however I've organised the data. I can make changes at this level. That then get immediately reflected if I go back to here at my top level. The other thing I can do is the board is feature rich when it comes to collaborative functionality. I can come along into a function called chat up the top here, and well, let's say I'm particularly concerned about this particular month, and maybe my club channel. What I can do is I can come along to my users, start a new chat. I've got a list of users here, but let's just start a chat with my boss, the administrator, and I can come along and I can say, I want to share this screen and write a note, boss, these numbers too low, and shoot that off to my boss. Now, at this point, let's just quickly log out and log back in as the administrator. I'm pretending to be two users at this point. Okay, so I log back in as the administrator, and what I can see up the top here is that someone's sent me a message. So I come along and say, well, okay, it was Blanchard. He's saying, boss, are these numbers too low? Click on the link. What it does, it nicely opens up the screen that Blanchard was looking at. It put the time range and the channel filters on, taking me straight to the data that he's particularly interested in. And hopefully at this point I can go away and say, I can see his problem, and off we can go. And you can see that if I go back into chat, that it will keep a trail of notes about what we're talking about. And I can go back and look at these other screens that we previously discussed as well. Okay, a few other things we can do as well. you'll notice in the data entry that we've got a status. Board also has some great workflow functionality around it. You can see that, say, the area manager Bishop has submitted and had their budget approved. If I go to Blanchard, their numbers are rejected. If I go to Brian, they're still in progress, and so on. So we've got a status for all of this. So the idea is, and when Blanchard finishes their numbers, he or she would then click on submit, and that would flag the budget for that particular manager as being finished. As an administrator, I can come in here at the top level and say, okay, here's the numbers as they're rolling up currently. Here's my list of budget contributors, the area managers, and they're some of them in progress, some of them approved, and so on. And what I can come in and say, Alvarez, he submitted his or her budget. It's particularly low on quantity and the revenue's not that kind of crash hot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reject that manager's budget. So what would occur now is an email might go back to Alvarez saying that your budget has been rejected, and it will be open for editing. Any submitted or approved budgets are obviously locked, and the end users, the area managers, can't edit them at that point. A really useful feature because it shows you whether people are actually entering numbers into their budget, always a common problem, getting the users to put anything in. And it also gives you the control that when they say they're finished, they've actually finished, and the numbers aren't going to move on you once you think they're completed. Okay, we can also make, as an administrator, some really high-level changes. So I can come in here and just, irrespective of which area manager, I can go to a particular product group and change it overall for all of the area managers if need be. And I'll reverse that. And likewise, we also have the usual filters on individual channels or products available as well. Board also has a perfect good financial reporting functionality. We can see we've got an end profit and loss statement going here. It's by business unit, so I can go and choose various business units to look at, and we can create variances, add notes, and so on. The other really good function is the ability to do scenario analysis. So we can come along and say, okay, well, that's a great set of numbers to start ourselves off. We're going to assume that perhaps is our best case scenario. So we can come along here and select our best case scenario, and I'm going to save our numbers into here as our best case. I then might go back to the business, unlock the workflows and say, guys, give me your worst case scenario, and then come along here and save the worst case. Why? Because it allows us to start to look at measuring different scenarios against each other. And all the reporting can handle that concept. The other thing the board's particularly good at, we can drop anything out. So I can export all of our reports out. So if I open that up, there's my report as a Excel spreadsheet. And I won't go into this in too much detail, but there's two-way. For instance, if this was a data entry spreadsheet, Board is capable of allowing us to be able to edit the values in the spreadsheet that will then flow back to Board. Last thing I wanted to show you is a little bit of a DIY. I'm just going to go to my screen list and open up an empty screen that I built before called DIY. Just quickly show you how easy it is to create a simple screen or report. I can come up to here and click on my configure option, and I can build myself very quickly a nice little report. choose some data, maybe my revenue data. I'm just dragging and dropping. That gives me a net revenue. That's great, but that doesn't really mean a lot to me at the moment. So maybe I'll say, well, I want it by fiscal year. So if I drag that and drop that on the column, then I'm getting my revenue by fiscal year. Maybe on the row, I want to look at what products. So I'll choose products, drag that up to row, let go. I'm getting my product group listed there. Let's drag something else over into the columns, just show you we can handle multiples. So there we go, we've got multiple by quarter and then by fiscal year. And I can also do some filtering. So for instance, I can select perhaps which fiscal year I want to work in, say the 12-13, select that. And then my report's drilled down. Okay, got my nice little report. I'll apply that, come back to the screen, and there it is. And that's a good taste of what we mean when we say that it's a programming-free, very drag and drop solution. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show you today. I'll hand the mic back to Rebecca.
Thanks very much, Philip. So I trust from Philip's demonstration that we tick the boxes, I guess, of how board can overcome some of the challenges that I discussed earlier, both from the independent research results that we rattled through in terms of things just taking too long and being outdated because they take too long, but also some of these more specific things about being able to manage the process, being able to easily collaborate, being able to easily integrate our planning, operational and financial planning, and do things quite quickly, like what-if scenarios, and hopefully you would have seen the ability there to quite easily move to more value-add activities like the rolling forecast. But hopefully the demo also got across what I was talking about, it being all in one, and that you saw that there's not a separate screen for the budget to the analysis and the report. They're actually inherently all part of one another. So as a user, I can go in and I can add my information that I need to, but at the same time have that information presented to me so I can analyse it and do some reporting prior to making decisions around a reforecast number or something along those lines. So we're going to just quickly move to our second poll question and just get your insight into what's your biggest priority to improve. Now, some of your challenges might be completely different to the ones that we mentioned today, but just some of the ones we've covered off today. Out of the I guess 4 options there, and potentially maybe all of the above, what's your biggest priority for your organisation or as an individual to improve? I'll just take a couple of seconds to get those results in. Now, at the same time, encourage you to any questions down that you'd like Philip and I to address. All right, might have a look at those results. Okay, looks like all of the above, but it's good to see that there's a strong result there too for that workflow and collaboration, which I think are quite powerful things around the budgeting forecasting process, because it really is a process. And it does involve multiple people collaborating with one another to get a better outcome. So I might just go back to our slides, which is the end of the session anyway, and we're going to address some questions. And we've had a few come through, but please do type in any questions that you have so that we can address them for you now. But Philip, I might direct this one to you. So the question is, I've seen on the demo you've been using a web browser. Are there other ways to interface with board, and particularly with the browser? Is it any browser, or does it have to be a specific browser?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was using Chrome, but basically all current versions of the of the popular browsers are supported, Edge, Safari, Firefox, and so on. Apart from that, there's also a installed program, a client board, and there's obviously when it comes to things like mobile use, you can either bring up the website on the mobile, but there's also specific mobile apps developed for a board as well. So I think the answer is kind of all of the above.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. And what systems can board integrate to is the next question.
Yeah, okay. So obviously our demonstration, we were talking about integrating to a ERP system. We didn't actually name it. Board has a number of connectors. We can connect to pretty much any cloud-based source. So if you've got Salesforce and you want to pick up that data, and Salesforce is sitting up on the cloud somewhere, or any ERP system that you'd have installed on a server on your premises, Board can connect to any and all of them.
Okay.
Oh, I should also mention that if your data source is as simple as a Excel spreadsheet or a text file sitting around somewhere, they're okay as well.
Okay, great. And you actually mentioned cloud. Just one other question. Is Board in the cloud?
Yes, it is. You can either put it on a public cloud server like Amazon Web Services, or private cloud, or even put it on your server on-premise. It doesn't really matter. It does all of those.
That's all the questions that we've had through, but what I've got here on the next slide is contact details. So if you do have any, the slide will finish on it, do you have any other questions, please send them through. I've got actually my email address there, so happy to address any questions or direct them to Philip or anyone else that could be able to help. We will also just have a quick survey at the end. And actually, Philip, I just would clarify one of your answers before about the cloud. It's Microsoft Azure is the yes, of course. Yep. Just a slight correction there. But if you have any questions, please contact there. We've got an early mark today for everyone, so they can get an early mark for lunch. If you're a PA customer, please speak to your account manager if you have any questions, or myself directly, and we'll exit the session. There'll be a quick survey with a couple of very quick questions for you, and one of them, importantly, is about any feedback that you have on topics that you would like to see us present in the future in webinars for our 2018 webinar schedule. So thank you, Philip, for your time, and thanks everyone for attending, and we look forward to catching up at our next webinar.